Hey, what's up guys? Clint Coons here, and in this video I want to talk about that dreaded due on sale clause that everyone seems to get hung up on when it comes to transferring real estate into their limited liability company. Okay, let's get started. So here's the issue. You talk to your local attorney, a CPA, financial planning advisor, and you tell them, hey, I bought this rental property and it's residential. Because remember, this doesn't apply to commercial real estate, which is more than 4 units, so 5 units or more. And typically it's not an issue if you're working with a community bank because they're going to write a portfolio loan. That means they're going to hold it themselves. They have different underwriting guidelines. Where this really comes into play is with those Freddie, Fannie conforming loans, which they control about 90% of the mortgage business in this country. So they have specific guidelines, and most conventional loans that you're writing, you're going to a mortgage broker, they're putting it together, they're following Freddie Fannie guidelines so they can sell it to one of those two institutions after they've written the loan. So they want to make sure they're complying with it. Now, for years, people have talked about that if you transfer your property that has a mortgage on it into an LLC, a lender can accelerate and call the note due. Now, I've been doing this for 23 years and I own a lot of real estate and I've transferred a lot of real estate of my own that's encumbered by mortgages. And I've never had a lender once call me up and say, hey, Clint, you really need to pay off this loan. We're going to accelerate it because you moved it into an LLC. It just doesn't happen. Why? Because I'm always current on my mortgage. I keep my property taxes paid and I keep my property insured. So I'm not doing anything that's going to upset the lender. Now, with that being said, I understand that there are some people who are concerned about it, that the lender could come back and let's say that interest rates jump 10 or 15%, and they decide that they want to start going through their portfolio of loans and accelerating them where the title has been transferred. So what I want to do with this video is give you some sense of calm that this isn't going to happen most likely. And you can tell people, hey, I saw this guy on YouTube and he was explaining to this attorney about how this works. And he actually showed me the guidelines for the due on sale clause when the lenders can accelerate a note. Because what I'm focusing on here is that vast majority of loans that most people fall into, those Freddie Fannie loans, and what are their requirements when it comes to transferring property. If you move it into an LLC, does it automatically result in a property or an acceleration? Well, let me just show you this. I'm going to bring up my guidelines right here. So as you can see here, this is the servicing guide for Fannie, and it talks about allowable exemptions due to the type of transfer. This has to basically say when they'll allow you to transfer title to real estate, and it won't result in the acceleration. So let me just scroll down. It talks about a lot of other things in here, joint tenancy, when you pass on. But what we're really interested in is real estate investors. How do we get our property into that LLC and we can sleep well at night on our pillow without worrying the lender's going to come up and ask us to refi the property? Well, first off, look, this clause right here, an exemption, it talks about moving the property into a trust. So this would apply to the land trust or living trust scenario, that you can move it in there and it's not going to be an issue when you put it into one of these trusts. Now, keep in mind that there are certain situations where this could be a problem, and that is if the property is your personal residence. And so if it's a personal residence and you've got a loan specifically for your primary or secondary residence, then the lenders could potentially accelerate when you move the property into an entity until you've met the 12-month residency requirement, which means that you've lived in the property for 12 months. But typically what they're looking for there is they want to know whether or not you've changed. That is, you're no longer living in that property. And so the way it's interpreted, and you should understand that, is let's assume I bought a house. It's my personal residence, and then I move out in 6 months and I turn it into a rental. Well, that's going to violate this clause, and it could give rise to acceleration if the lender found out about it. Put it into an LLC, you're no longer living there, you've converted it from a personal residence into investment property. And I understand what they're trying to do is prevent people from qualifying for these lower interest rates, more favorable loans, because they're going to treat the property as a personal residence and not an investment property, when in reality, that's what they intended to do. But I'm just focusing on investment property. Let's get that property into a limited liability company and not worry about it. So here's what you're going to see down here. You come down a little bit further in this servicing guideline. And I'm going to put these both links to both of these in the show notes. If you want to go read them themselves, by all means, check them out on your own. Send them to professionals who tell you can't do this. You can transfer it into an LLC provided that, A, the mortgage occurred after 2016. Again, we're dealing with Fannie here. And the LLC is controlled by the original borrower, or the original borrower owns a majority interest in the LLC. Now, this is what we're getting at here. You can put it into the limited liability company provided you're in control of that limited liability company or you own a majority interest. Now, most of us, when we set up our LLCs, we're going to be controlling them. So it's allowed to do this. Now, the only exception they have, the caveat again, is that 12-month occupancy if it's a personal residence, okay? If you bought the property originally for that, then you got to live in it for 12 months before you do this. But for investment property, it's pretty obvious here that Fannie's okay with you putting it in, and the servicer is not going to accelerate when it moves into a limited liability company. Now, we also have Freddie to consider because they're the other big player in the business. And so what do they say? Well, here's theirs. 8406.4, the servicing guideline, deals with Freddie Mac and transfers of ownership. So in their guidelines, they state that you can transfer it to a limited liability company or limited partnership, provided that the managing member, general partner of the LLC is the original borrower. So again, it's similar. They use different language. You just have to be in control. And if there's multiple borrowers, let's say you and your spouse, then you must be members in that limited liability company. And at least one of you must be a manager or general partner in the case of a limited partnership. So it basically states this. If my wife and I bought a property together, we were both on the loan, and we take that investment property and we put it into a limited liability company, we both need to own those LLCs, and we both should be controlling it, or one of us needs to be controlling it. Well, that's the way we're setting them up. Now, we may be using a holding LLC in there, but you're still the member indirectly through that LLC, so it's just you. What they're concerned about, obviously, in this type of situation would be if you bought a property subject to existing financing, which a lot of people do, and I got some videos on that, and then you transfer that interest over. But again, they'd have to, in those situations, they'd have to go searching. But for you, for your investment properties, it's not going to create an issue for you where the servicer will come in and accelerate your mortgage. And you can also put it into trust. Trusts are acceptable as well with Freddie. Let me just go to, in fact, Freddie's more adopting of this, and they'll even allow you to take title to property, investment property, and refinance property that's in a land trust. So I know many of you investors use land trusts. I talk about them a lot on my channel. And here's just another situation where you can take advantage of that if you're using one of these types of loans. And the thing about it, of course, is that all the beneficiaries of the land trust must be individuals. And the mortgage premises must be the only asset in the trust, which states this. When you provide your trust to them, if they want to review it, you got to make sure that the only beneficiaries, don't list an LLC, it needs to be you, and that trust is only going to hold one property. So the thing is that the due on sale clause, I think for many of us is not the issue we make it out to be. I know a lot of people like to beat those fear drums that you shouldn't move and protect your assets. But Freddie and Fannie, the largest controllers of mortgages in this country, they're now accepting of it. These are recent regulations that have been passed in the last few years in their servicing guide that allow for this. And so I hope you take away from this that putting properties into limited liability companies, it's not going to be as bad as so many people make it out to be. And a lot of the reasons why is because, back in 2010, 12, 13, and earlier, there were issues with that. They said that Freddie and Fannie would accelerate these notes. I never saw it happen, but everyone said it did. I guess like everyone says, Bigfoot is in the Pacific Northwest. Haven't seen it yet, but enough people believe it. And then you know what happens. It kind of gets this group think around it. Wouldn't worry about it. Anyways, hope you liked the video. If you got any questions, put them down below. Also, if you check out those links yourself, they're in the show notes. And thanks for watching, guys. Take care.